Thank you all for joining us, and I'd like to introduce the museum's Assistant Director, Amy Huffnagel.
Welcome. Thank you so much for making time for this new program series at the Sing Sing Prison Museum. You are at a program titled Carceral Conversations, What I Brought Home and Left Behind. Formerly incarcerated people share memories and personal collections. My name is Amy Huffnagel. I'm the Assistant Director of this museum project in development, slated to open in 2025. Together with my colleagues, we are presenting the second in a 6-part series this evening, and it is happening every second Thursday through February. So if you enjoy today's program, please share the link from our website calendar with your friends or your social media networks and help us spread the word about these conversations. Each program builds upon the previous conversation, and all are used to inform our process as we start this museum. Your comments, your questions as audience members really matter to us, and these conversations and your comments will play a role in our development. So please take a few moments to fill out our program survey, which we'll be sending to you after the program. So just a few notes on terms of engagement and on the museum in general before we start. First, language. At the Sing Sing Prison Museum, we use people-first language, so we don't talk about inmates or convicts or felons. We talk about currently or formerly incarcerated people, returning citizens, or people who are just recently released, and justice-impacted individuals, which is someone touched by the justice system. I don't expect everyone else to follow this, but we do always like to start our presentations by encouraging all of us to be mindful of the way this language operates. Second, the Sing Sing Prison Museum is hosting this as a nonpartisan event to foster open and inclusive educational discourse about incarceration, history, material culture, and civic engagement in the United States. So this event is not intended to be a forum for your personal platform, but rather to share things in a communal way. We welcome participation in the chat, and we will be monitoring it. And the chat is really for sharing ideas or thoughts or impressions, whereas it's the Q&A tab that we will use for posing questions. And at a certain point in our program, we will move to audience participation. So we encourage you to populate that Q&A and the chat as we go along. Third, I just wanted to spend a minute saying, who is the Sing Sing Prison Museum? We're an independent nonprofit organization led by a deeply dedicated board of trustees and a very small staff. And we are creating a museum in Austining, New York. The mission of the museum is to share stories of incarceration and reform, past and present, and bring people together to imagine and create a more just society. So please visit our website to learn more about our programming, and we do have a really compelling Giving Tuesday campaign coming up in the next few weeks. So now on to framing our conversation for today. What does it mean to remember? Each of us is a place of memory, and then too, each of us is a collection of memories. Memories are a significant personal collection, and often we use memorabilia, saved or collected items, everyday things, to link our memory to our outward-facing identity and our sense of being human by how we define ourselves with these things. Objects prompt memory, they prompt tellings. For instance, I have a stone on my desk that links to this time. You get the point. So while we're going in on the physical things tonight, we also want to be mindful that we are also always collecting and shedding experiences and ideas and feelings. Thank you to our presenters tonight who are being so generous with their experiences throughout this series. We know it's a hard place to revisit, and we really appreciate you remembering publicly with us to expand all of our understandings. In the spirit of sharing along with you, let us start from the vantage point of our own museum collection and what we're working on, something my colleague Nicole Hamilton and I are constantly probing is, what does our museum collection look like? As the collections and programs manager for the Sing Sing Prison Museum, Nicole thinks deeply about how collections work and can better serve communities, including developing more inclusive policies that count for the unique needs of marginalized groups. She has presented on prison museums and collection concerns at the AASLH, MAAM, and the Manny conferences recently. She has currently served on the leadership team of the Association of Carceral Sites and Museums. She holds an undergraduate degree in history from Carleton College and a master's in museum studies from George Washington University. And she's going to begin our program by sharing something already in our collection at this point and layering into our conversation our museum approach to the material culture of incarceration as we continue to delve. I look forward to listening. Nicole, hi.
Amy, thank you so much for that introduction. So my name's Nicole. I am the Collections and Programs Manager. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I want to thank you all for being here. In our first webinar, I asked you all to think about, why do museums collect and what do they collect? But this time, I want us all to turn inward a little. Many of us are familiar with Zoom by now. Maybe you've used it for work. And I don't know about all of you, but before I realized that virtual backgrounds were a thing, I was very concerned about what was behind me. And when the transition to virtual work happened, I had just started a new job, and it was this one actually, with new coworkers, and I really wanted to make a good impression. So I curated my background. I made sure all my books about museum theory were visible, and I straightened out the framed photos that were on the wall behind me, and I probably moved my dead plant out of view. And now I'm not sharing this just so you all know like how incredibly anxious I was to start a new job. It's an example of how we use objects to show our identity and individuality, and how we try to convey aspects of ourselves by the material things we surround ourselves with. I wanted to signal specific traits to my new coworkers, like that I was well read or could keep plants alive. And this is something that we all do, maybe not with Zoom backgrounds, but with how we dress or decorate our homes. So I said I wanted us to turn inward. And so I want you to think about, how do you express your identity or individuality? What things or material objects do you use to do that? So you can share in the chat, or you can just kind of think on this. I think of the tchotchke that I keep around, or what clothes I wear, especially if there's a slogan on them. And for some people, maybe it's the mug that they're using or their smartphone case. There are so many small choices that we make day to day to assert our individuality. Now imagine you don't get to decorate your living space however you want, or you really don't get a choice in how you dress. When you're incarcerated, whether now or especially historically, those small things are taken from you. You're given a number and a uniform, and maybe you can decorate yourself, but certainly not with anything you want. So how do you create that sense of self as an individual? Time and again, we hear that one of the worst aspects of incarceration is that loss of individuality and identity, the loss of humanity. So I want you to keep that in mind as we look at two pieces from the museum's collection. So this first piece is a calligraphy page from 1922. The second is also a calligraphy page from 1922. Neither of these are signed, so we don't know who created them, but we do know that calligraphy and show card writing were taught at Sing Sing prison. So it's highly likely that these pages were produced by two different people in the same class. These classes were sponsored by the Mutual Welfare League alongside other artistic and athletic opportunities. The goal was to provide the incarcerated men with different types of enrichment, at least in part with the goal of rehabilitation. So looking at these side by side, we see there are a lot of similarities. These men were probably given a template to color and told what message to write to someone with best wishes from the Mutual Welfare League of Sing Sing Prison, 1922. And this could be yet another example of how incarcerated people are deprived of their individuality. They didn't get to write anything they wanted, and they didn't get to pick the frame, and they may not have even chosen who they wrote to. But maybe instead we can see them as ways of asserting individual identity. Perhaps most obviously, they used different colors. And this might seem really minor, but when you don't have many opportunities to express yourself, it's not hard to imagine wanting to pick your favorite colors or assert some sort of aesthetic choice. And their different choices have an impact. Even though the template is the same, in one of them, the flowers stand out much more, whereas the cascade at the bottom is better highlighted by the other. Another noticeable choice, they used different scripts. And not just subtly different, where maybe one person was more skilled. They're completely different calligraphy styles. One of these uses what's called blackletter or Gothic script, and the other looks kind of like 16th century English script or courthand. But I hesitate to say that because I haven't been able to find an exact analog. And I'll admit I'm not an expert in calligraphy forms, but from my preliminary research, it looks like the artist added their own flair to a calligraphy type they had been taught. And whether it is a standard form that I'm just not familiar with, or this person's individual style, the simple point still stands that they chose something different. So now you might be wondering why I just walked you through all these differences. Well, it's a bit of an analogy. See, in the catalog record, these two objects are pretty hard to distinguish. 2021.05.36 and 2021.05.37, calligraphy page for mutual welfare class. It's a pretty standard museum catalog record. But we just looked at all the ways they are so clearly different. And this really speaks to the type of work the Sing Sing Prison Museum does. We're going deeper. Our interpretation is working to restore the individuality and humanity to the people who were incarcerated at Sing Sing. And it's why we always say incarcerated individuals, because each and every person at Sing Sing, and I'm including corrections officers and administration and family members who visit, is an individual with a story to tell that's personal, that's unique, and that's important. So when presented with objects like these, we have to keep digging because unlike the guests on this webinar series, the two men who created these calligraphies aren't able to share their stories in their own words. And it's also why we're doing this webinar series, because as we'll hear, the objects someone chooses to bring home from their incarceration tell a story of personal strength and of creating and maintaining a sense of self and individuality. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to my colleague, Robert Rose, the communications coordinator at the Sing Sing Prison Museum. He's also a researcher with a focus on dismantling the prison industrial complex and working towards improving the lives of people currently incarcerated. Robert has contributed to numerous reports with organizations including Worth Rises and the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. So Robert, please take it away.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Rose. I'm the communications coordinator at the Sing Sing Prison Museum. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, where we'll explore the journey of transformation through personal artifacts. These items are significant because they represent the struggles, the skills learned, and the personal growth experienced within the carceral system. We will discuss why individuals choose to carry certain items with them upon their release and what they leave behind. I hope you find this webinar insightful and informative. Possessions acquired during the prison term hold more significance than mere material value. They may represent the identity one had during confinement, serve as a reminder of personal strength, or indicate the start of a new life. On the other hand, belongings left behind may indicate a deliberate effort to let go of the past and move towards a brighter future. It's my great pleasure to introduce Tanya, the founder of Life Unbolted. Tanya embodies a transformative change through her life experiences. She spent approximately 4 years in the federal system where she discovered the power of creation to endure. Her story is about perseverance, education, and leadership. She co-designed the Columbia Law School's Paralegal Pathways Initiative and continues to advocate for those affected by the federal carceral system. Tanya, we are thrilled to have you with us today. Could you give us an overview of your journey and what brings us together for this conversation?
Hi, Robert. Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. This is an incredible experience. I want to thank you. I want to thank Sing Sing Prison Museum for this amazing opportunity to delve back into my days in Danbury and really have this formative conversation. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm excited to be here.
Tanya, the heart of our webinar is the exploration of personal artifacts from incarceration. Could you share with us a specific item you chose to bring home and the story behind it?
Well, I brought home my gym bag. And this gym bag here traveled from Danbury through Port Authority and also the mass transit system to get me to the halfway house. I chose to bring that home because that was one of the things that I was used to. I was used to carrying my gym bag, working out, and doing different activities while I was there. In the process, when I finally got and I'm going to read from my journal, when I finally got a chance to sign and be fingerprinted, I knitted me a bag because I'm like, it's finally going to happen. I'm finally going home and I want something personal and I want something kind of cute to go home besides the gym bag. And it was that I'm going to read from my journal, if you don't mind.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. It was April 2nd, 2017. It says, today, finally, I got fingerprinted and signed my documentation. Miss Candace, that was the secretary in Danbury, came on a visit floor and had me sign my documents. Now this girl has been through it all with me. From the beginning to the end, she had been right here by my side. And that was my daughter. She was visiting me. Praise God. Lord, do something special for her. Grant her heart's desires. Because finally, I'm being freed. I'm looking forward to going home. I'm excited and I'm also nervous. But in the end, I got fingerprinted. Finally, thank you, God. And that was my journal that I kept while I was in Danbury. One of the other things that I had come home with was I made this hat and I also made a poncho to match. I was excited and it's pretty snazzy because it also has a hood. And I made this poncho and this hat because while I was in Danbury, I had made my son a blanket. And it was these same colors and the same yarn. And I wanted to be that when I first see him, we could connect because now we both had something. He no longer had to see me in green. And he now gets to see me in something that's very similar to him. So I was super excited. But most of all, I kept this envelope, and this is what I came home with, my release documents. And I have right here my bus ticket. This was life for me. This is my second chance. This is freedom. And I'll never, ever get rid of this because in Danbury, they give you $43. When you're coming to New York, they give you $43. And as you can see right here, it says the bus ticket starts at $20. Well, there's a convenience fee, and I spent $23 of the $43. But here's the actual ticket. This was my journey. On riding on the bus home, I thought of all of the things that I had felt shame, the guilt, the embarrassment, but I was ready to take on a new life and start again. And my journey in having my poncho, my bag, having also, the documentation, because I had an outfit that my mom had sent me to wear. I was geared up. I was ready for normalcy because guess what? After so many years, I look like everyone else who was riding a bus, except for having a gym bag that has holes in it. Besides that, I was in society again. So I was very excited, and it meant so much to me. And on my bus ride home, I read excerpts from my journal. I started using the breathing skills and some meditation skills that I had learned while I was in prison, and said, Tanya, we're going to do this not one day at a time, but 1 second at a time, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day. And I just held on to everything that I had here. The $43 now was $20 when I bought my bus ticket. And when I got to Port Authority, I had to call the halfway house because they have accountability calls because I was furloughed. And I paid some guy because there were no payphone booths. That was 2017. There were no payphone booth. I paid some guy $5 to use his phone just so that I could be, I could be in compliance. So now I had $15. And from that $15, I had to buy a Metro card. And when I purchased the Metro card, I had like a little over $9 or so left. And I made it to the halfway house. And then I said, you know what? I want to find work. In this envelope here, a friend of mine had wrote me and given me an opportunity for a job. And I had this document going into the halfway house, going to have a job. But I didn't have money and I didn't have a birth certificate. And the birth certificate cost $17.50. And I had $9. And there it goes, the trauma and the shame all over again. So this is a great opportunity, a great space so that we can have a chance to talk about where we've been and now how we've overcome, and to share with people actual furlough documents, BOP. This is actual, this really happens. And also, we do try to seek employment while we're in prison the best way we can. Little notes, So, Robert, next question, because I can go on and on and on. Sorry.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing. One question I had is that the items that you showed early on that you made, did you know how to knit and crochet prior to your incarceration?
No.
Amazing.
No, I didn't know how to knit or crochet. And even as I look at this bag right now, I'm wondering, how did I do it? And I had no patterns. There were no patterns.
That's amazing. A lot of talent there, Something I want to ask you is, like, you bought these things home. You bought the poncho home, the hat you bought home, the blanket you made for your son. Do you see these items as like having an anchor towards your strength that you have today?
Yes, yes. And I think one of the reasons, that's why I still keep them so close. I mean, the bag, my mom confiscated it after she saw it, and I'm happy to be doing this webinar at her house today. You actually can probably see me as a child, my pictures, and you know, it grounds me. It takes me to a place where was a lot of sadness and a lot of pain, but it's also a place where I met beautiful people. You know, I remember growing up as a child. I was the only child for 10 years. I used to say, I wonder what it's like to have my own friends, because I came from a lot of cousins, and the cousins were my friends. I wonder what it's like to have my own friends that's not my cousin's friends. And I used to wonder as a child, how do I build relationships outside of my family? And what happened? Going to a, you know, I'm not going to call it what it is, a dungeon, going to a place and building family, friends, has been an amazing experience for me. Like right now, if you want to eat somewhere, Robert, in a state, you can ask me and I can make a phone call to almost anywhere and say, you going to Alabama? Oh, give me 5 minutes. I call a friend that I have there. I have grown so much and just really bonded with people. It's really an amazing journey through all the pain, because I guess we've seen each other vulnerable in certain ways you don't even have in your family, certain privacies you don't have. Now you have it with the sisters that you're with, you know, and it's amazing.
Hmm. You mentioned the sisters that you were with. Do you remember leaving certain things behind that you decided to leave just so it could be a part of the system, or you didn't want to bring home or something like that?
Well, yes, I actually left a lot of, you know, cosmetics because they're expensive. I left knitting needles, yarn, because those are special orders. Also, I I wouldn't say left. I would say I passed along things to women who I met, who came to me and said, you know, I've watched you over the last few months. I really don't have the resources. Do you mind passing this? And I'm talking it, and it has been towels. And I actually took it as an honor that people who I wasn't with every day, going to the gym or working out with or reading with or going to Bible study with, actually thought enough of me to ask me, do you mind, you know, passing along things to me? It was, I was excited and I was humbled. You know, it's you touch people in a way as you're leaving in ways you can't even imagine. People have watched your journey and change their situation.
And from your experience, has your prison experience changed you in any way?
Oh, yes. Yes, probably in more ways than I could probably. We don't even have enough time on this webinar to go into the things that I've changed. One of the things is patience. Patience, empathy, compassion, uh, a, a love for all individuals and circumstances. And me personally, I eat certain things that I didn't eat before. And also I don't eat certain things anymore, you know, mystery meat and things like that. But what it really did for me was made me appreciate the freedoms and not take anything for granted. You know, I don't take anything for granted, but what I do find myself that I changed is I still take an afternoon a week to myself to do absolutely nothing. And that's something I never did before. Now I consciously make an effort to not take phone calls, not do anything with my family or anyone, but just some time with me. And that's something, had I not been there before, I would have never done that before.
I ask you, how have the lessons that you've learned during your incarceration help you drive your mission for positive societal transformation today? Well, I guess we're having a problem with the connection right now. Hopefully we can get her back. Let me look at the chat.
Oh, yes. How has
How has the lessons you learned during your incarceration help you drive your mission for positive societal changes today?
you can hear, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Okay, she said turn. Yeah, okay, let's stop the video maybe. And now repeat the question one more time and we'll be.
Well, I know you mentioned that your lessons, and I was just asking, like, the lessons that you learned during incarceration, how do they help you drive your mission for positive societal transformation today with the work that you're doing in the community today?
Well, my experience helps me in the work that I work with young adults that's impacted by the federal system that are currently in the community and on home confinement because they're in a diversion program. And what happens is I give them hope and resilience because you really see individuals advocating and being a support who have lived experience in the federal system. So my work, I do a cohort style of career training empowerment for the young adults that's impacted in the Eastern District of New York. And it's quite a different trajectory than people that are impacted by the state because they're on ankle monitors, they're on, sometimes 24-hour home confinement. But if they have jobs and going to school, and that's what we help them to seek employment and education. And also, I don't call it family reunification because they're home, but it's family unification. And looking at the whole family dynamic and making sure that the individuals also are accountable. But on the other end, society sees a young adult with an ankle monitor, who's hiring them? Some schools don't want them there. So advocating and saying, give this person their first opportunity. And on the other side, I am actually an advocate around restitution, fines, and fees associated with the federal system. I mean, it's been all over the news lately about the way that they want to take 75% of people's money when they come in. But what you see on television is 1% of the people that is really behind the system, and people's families are contributing to commissary. You make 12 cents an hour. You think you can buy anything there? You really can't. So really advocate in bringing the reality of the federal system, not what you see on TV. It's not the same.
So that's the work that you do with your organization, Life Unvaulted?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes. That's what we do. Currently we are also working on legislation called Fairness and Restitution. Next week we're doing our first town hall, really discuss, and we've been working with and I heard you mention the NACDL and the federal defenders are supporting us in our act.
That's cool. Now, like in preserving and sharing narratives of formerly incarcerated people like you did today is crucial role in institutions like the Sing Sing Prison Museum. What role do you see these types of establishments, museums like this, playing in supporting the experiences and causes of those who have been incarcerated?
It's very important because most times people only hear about, the prison system when it's something harsh on the news, but seeing the real people, the real individuals, and what they have accomplished, like look at the beautiful artwork that she had placed before us. Look at what I've done here. Look at us as the individuals. I think the place is just to give us an opportunity to be displayed and show our normalcy and our inclusivity.
Well, we have a comment from one of the viewers, I think it's Annam, and they ask, what did you do to attain your first job when you got out?
What did I do to obtain my first job? Well, I had it was of my daughter actually knew an organization that was hiring, and I sent my resume. I had typed it up yes, in 2017, I had typed my resume the old-fashioned way on a Danbury computer, on typewriter, Hunt and Peck, yes. And I mailed it. And what he did was he wrote me, we corresponded back and forth writing until I made the phone call and we had a conversation. I stayed on top, I stayed on top of him, and let him know this is a good opportunity for me and also show my determination. I want this job, I need this job, and I'm going to be a great employee. So I guess I let him get to learn me through letter writing and back and forth over the telephone to get a sense of who I am, not where I was or what I've been through, but who I am as an individual.
Wonderful. We have another question, a comment. It's anonymous, and they ask, do you still crochet and knit?
uh, Holiday season, yes. Holiday season, I will make a few one scheme wonders, and one scheme wonders being the one scheme of yarn. You make a pair of socks, you make a sarong. Yes, I do. I do make one scheme wonders. I don't go into ponchos anymore, but one scheme, yes.
All right, so I have to really ask you now is, as we start to conclude this portion of the webinar, is there any message that you hope our audience takes away from our discussion today, considering the significance of these objects and memories that you brought home?
Yes, I would love for the audience to just look at the objects that we have, also just and just take a step back and look at the humanity of the individuals behind the objects, knowing what our vices were to be able to make these projects. For me to make to make this poncho here, to make this bag here, it took 4 months of waiting for supplies. It took a whole lot. Every item that you see, think about it, and just think the person had to wait on other people's and other vices. But yet, at the end of the day, we produced art. We don't give up. Give us an opportunity to show our craft. Thank you.
We have another comment or question in the chat. It says, do you still work in the same position that you got when you got out of prison for work? And what position do you do, or what type of work do you do now?
No, I no longer do the same work anymore. And when I came home, it was so helpful to help me because I was advocating and doing community outreach in Coney Island when I came home. So it helped me to build my organization on exactly what I went through in the federal system. But it was the platform from my job in Coney Island that helped me to do what I do today.
And in looking back at the women that you left behind, how I know when people leave behind people, it's a certain feeling that you have. When you left, how did you feel and how do you deal with that now?
That was part of the hardest thing of leaving now my sisters behind. I'm gonna be honest with you. When they call, I told, most people when they leave, everyone gives them, slap them five, and you walk out with a crowd. I was so overwhelmed and I was so sad that I was leaving them. I told my girlfriends, I told them, I says, I can't say goodbye. I just can't. I'll see you later. I can't. I said, when they call my name to go down the hill, I'm just going to run out the door because I'm just not going to make it. And that's what I did. No one believed me. When they called my name, I just dashed through the door. I couldn't say goodbye to anyone. I just couldn't. I couldn't even look anyone in the eye. I I I was it's very sad. It's very sad. It's almost like a funeral feeling, that sort of sadness. You're leaving loved ones behind that have helped you to groom and grow in ways you never even imagined, taking care of you when you were sick and couldn't take care of yourself, mentally and physically. Priceless. So I couldn't say goodbye to anyone. I stayed in the room while everyone hovered around, waiting around. And when they called my name, I ran.
Mm. And well, I understand how it feels when you're connected to people for so many years. You say you were there for 4 years, and the bonds and relationships you develop over those 4 years, and just to walk away. I understand what you mean. It's a hard feeling. But then I have to ask. I know you mentioned that you brought home the furlough papers or something like that when you left. Do you mind reading a portion of that so people can understand what they say?
Okay. Well, she just said we don't use certain words anymore. So you have to sign this conditions of your furlough. So I'm only reading what the BOP said. This is not my language. Okay. And I had to initial it. It says, it just tells you all the things you will violate. I'm just trying to think of something that's not so abrasive. A furlough will only be approved if and blank agrees to the following. An incarcerated person agrees to the following conditions and understand that while on the furlough, she remain in the legal custody of the U.S. Attorney General in service of the term of incarceration. 2, it's subject to persecution for escape if he or she fails to return to the institution at a designated time. Right here, 2:00.
Mm.
So this right here was the marching orders. May be thoroughly searched and given a urinalysis, breath analysis, and other comparable tests during the furlough or upon return to the institution. It may be pre-authorized the cost of such tests. So they can give you tests and you have to pay. So these are some of the conditions.
And I know during our pre-interview we had a week or so ago, we talked about a letter that you wrote. Do you want to talk about that letter now, or we can go on to something else?
We spoke, yes, we spoke about a letter. At the time, my my son, when I went to trial, my son was 1 year old. And when I was sentenced, he was 2, going on 3. So in my sentencing minutes, I wrote a letter to him and read it because I said that when the day comes and he learns that his mother had been incarcerated, I want him to know at the moment that I had to leave, the way I felt for him and how much I loved him. So in my sentencing transcript, at a later date, when he is older and the discussion comes, because he still doesn't know that I was away, because I went in, he was so little, and I returned, he was, heading to the first, he was in the first grade, going to the second grade. But the way Danbury was set up, he really didn't understand it because he grew up in it. So his thing was like, oh, the green school. Mommy's at the green school. A few years ago, he used to say, when you going to go back to the green school? Because, I go to City Island and eat good with my grandma. No, I'm never going back to the green school. But one of the things is that I want him to know, so that when we have that conversation, he'll know that I loved him. I made mistakes. Mistakes were made, but it had absolutely nothing to do with him and my plans and his plans and the goals that he should achieve in his life. But I wanted him to hear it from me in first person at the time it happened, and not years later.
One of the questions, I don't know if you saw it, there's an article in the New York Times today that describes the conditions in a federal women prison in Florida. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, the federal women's prisons in Florida are horrible. Some of them don't even have kitchens, and meals are brought in. It just doesn't end. One of the things in Danbury that I even was upset about, was hearing about all of this advocacy and all of this protest about no new jails, no new prisons, close rackers, do this, do that. But in 2016 and 2017, while I was there, they built a federal prison for women. They built a 180-bed facility right on Danbury's, so the feds have just been doing what they want to do underneath the radar. So I'm glad for this article, and I'm glad for this opportunity to really show people impacted by the feds are no country clubs. There are no pools. It's prison. It's prison. There's no camp cupcake and all of these terminologies that you hear. No way.
And Tanya, your reflections create a beautiful tapestry of endurance and self-discovery. Just the personal items of incarceration can tell, the things you brought home, the stories you shared today, they're just powerful examples of the human resilience and ability to change and the complex nature of our experiences. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving us a glimpse into your world and the things you brought home, and for sharing the letter to your son and why you did it. That was very important. And do you have any last words you'd like to add before I go back to Amy?
I would just like to say thank you for this opportunity. Thank you. And I look forward to the museum and the huge collection that we are going to put together. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Tanya, I learned so much, and it's so important for us all to see the beauty of your knitting work that you did without a pattern or experience, and all the patterns that appeared in that, and how many counts and paying attention that you had to do to make that repeat so beautifully. I'm stunned by your work, and the stories of the documents and the things resonate and remind us all what you value and why. I'm still reeling from the $40+ that you were expected to exit with, and that would be enough, and how complicated that must have been for you. But so we'll all take your stories and your objects and your experiences with us in all the right ways tonight. I want to encourage everyone who is with us to join us again in December. On the 12th of December, we gather again for another conversation. And that program happens at 7 p.m. So go to our calendar on the website and sign up if you have not already. Next week, we're starting a Giving Tuesday campaign. And really just want to say we're going to send you a survey, and your opinion really matters to us. Please respond and let us know what you think. And join our e-blast so you can keep up with us of things that are coming up. And if you want to go backwards on other things that we've done, go to the Sing Sing Prison Museum YouTube channel, where you can find lots more examples of great programming. We look forward to seeing you again in a month. Robert, you did a beautiful job interviewing Tanya. Thanks so much, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.